Greetings to the brothers. This is Wayman Brown, the creator of the EsquireProject.com, a website dedicated to helping the self-enterprising black man eliminate barriers to his personal achievement. I want to welcome you to another video. Be sure to check out the links in this description, as well as in other videos. Feel free, as always, to touch base with me. And of course, I appreciate all of the brother support in advance. Now, as we move through these phases of our personal development, we're going to get into a variety of topics that I believe should be addressed a little bit more, as they present very realistic scenarios that take place in daily life. And this next video is nothing short of that. When you think about human beings, we really do live incredible lives, because even if every second of our lives were under a microscope for the world to see, there's still an entirely different part of us that nobody gets to see. And that's through what goes on within the confines of our imagination. For example, just think about the communication that takes place between men and women in a variety of instances. Those really simple moments, like when you go to a store and you can be at one end of the aisle and all the way at the other end you see an attractive woman walking your way. And it's like as soon as you catch wind of her feminine presence, her smile, you'll probably smell her perfume coming down the aisle, you notice her silhouette, your antenna goes up. And she also has hers go off as well, because you both recognize each other's presence, and you might just walk past each other with a little smirk, brief eye contact, or maybe even a greeting in an undertone. Perhaps even catching each other looking back and trying to get a glimpse of each other before you go on about your day. Or maybe those other times when you might just be at the job or in any other situation, just kind of having a conversation with a female. Nothing necessarily even related to anything, as far as love or romance or relationships. You can just be having a regular old conversation about something general in life. But there's a certain moment within that conversation where you realize that you kind of click, possibly on a different level. You realize that you might have some similar ideas or values about something, and you look in each other's eyes for a few extra seconds longer than you normally would in a moment like this, because without saying a word, you both know that you notice each other a little bit differently in a situation like this. And these are all normal social occurrences. They take place all day, every day, particularly between men and women. And since these types of dynamics are very well known among us, over the years as a society, we've created different policies, even some actual laws, in order to establish boundaries, which are supposed to eliminate a lot of the problems that can arise between the opposite sex, and also to protect others who might be affected by the choices that both of those parties could end up making together. But I also think about those other scenarios that aren't restrictive at all. And that is through what takes place within the private circumference of our own minds, by the thoughts that we entertain and indulge in. And I truly believe that it's within this secret place of our minds that one's true morality is tested. Up until fairly recently, before I really just accepted things for how they were, based on coming into a realization, as many of us have within the media spaces that we participate in. One thing that really used to disturb me about romantic relationships is how a woman can be with you and yet still not really be with you. Meaning, of course, that there's really no telling where she stands with you on the inside. Not through her words, not through the title that you share with her, not even through her deeds, but through her actual mentality. Where does she really have her head and her heart? And in this society, one of the major components within the culture of what are considered romantic relationships is that exclusive bond that two people get an opportunity to share with each other, where they actually choose to align each other or align with each other to be a part of each other's lives. But in this day and age, with all the dating that takes place, all the casual sex and everything else that takes place, is basically a free-for-all. In this day and age, where more than likely the woman that you've dealt with has already dealt with multiple men sexually, multiple men emotionally, if you're not the first, the last, and the only man whom your girl or your wife has been with, the only love she's ever known, the only person that she shared very important signature moments in life with, then she may have her mind elsewhere, even if she isn't doing anything with anyone else. I had a conversation which it really did actually disturb me a lot at the time with a particular woman, because she mentioned to me that after about 20 years of marriage to a solid man, a very supportive man, very supportive of her and her endeavors, loving husband, overall solid good guy. After all those years, she felt that there was another man whom she was actually supposed to marry. So even though she's shared decades with this man, built a life with him, created life with him, her mind and her heart after all this time was somewhere else. And she mentioned that she was very much so still good friends with this individual whom she was referring to, as they had actually grew up together. And she said something that really struck me in the conversation. She said the next time that they go and hang out, she's going to ask this friend of hers why he never asked her to marry him. Listen at this, man. After all those years, she still has her heart somewhere else. And if it ain't bad enough, the man that she felt this soulmate connection with, because of this very close friendship that she had with him, and because she didn't really have any surviving male relatives that were nearly as close to her as he was at the time, this man actually gave her away to her husband. That's gut-wrenching, isn't it? Imagine that. Here it is. She has an entirely secret set of feelings that I highly doubt she ever expressed to her husband for another man. The husband, who I'm sure would give his life for his wife, gets bits and pieces of her soul. And from the way that she mentioned things, I don't even actually think the other guy and her ever took it there as far as on a sexual level or anything like that. But that tension after all these years, that lingering feeling of what if, at different points in time over the years, have apparently pulled on her a little bit stronger than the family that she actually has. But I also think about some experiences that I've had with women. One who I actually had spent some time with just several years ago. We hadn't talked in a while, and we finally got on the phone one night, and she mentioned to me that she had pretty much been in like an on and off again relationship with a guy for many, many years. And I guess at this point they were back on. But because she still had a fond memory of spending the little bit of time that we did share, but because those memories were still fond to her, she said, if you'll have me, even though I have a guy, I still want to spend the night with you. Another woman whom I actually had spent a lot of time with in an intimate way. She actually got engaged to a guy. Again, very solid man, only speaks highly of him, etc. But she said to me, you know what? If things between me and you would have been a little bit different as far as time, and this is not somebody who I had been in a relationship with, we had an understanding, we did whatever we did. But she mentioned that if things were a little bit different, even though she was engaged to be married to this guy, he wouldn't have stood a chance with her if things would have lined up with me and her more, to actually be able to start a formal relationship. I even think about another instance where there was a female who I spent time with. I was probably about 24. She was about 23. So I'm 35 now. So this had to be, about 10 years plus. And she had started dating someone, and right before she had started dating this guy, me and her were kind of seeing where things could go, and that's another story, but ultimately it didn't really go anywhere. Nonetheless, she still wanted to keep in touch and still wanted to call herself being friends, but I remember she said something where she actually came to my house one night. This is while she's with this guy. And she actually said, why can I love two people? She even admitted that she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. She said those words. And then I look back at other instances where over the years I've worked with different women or been acquainted with some, and they always kind of on the slide would always try to put the idea out there of something sexual. It wasn't even me trying to flirt with them. It was just they were used to me. They were around me, see me every day, for example, at the job, whatever it might be. And they just felt comfortable. And then there was a time where I will say that even though I wasn't entertaining these things, it was a little flattering. But then I quickly thought about it and I said, if these women can do this with me, why wouldn't a woman who I'm with be able to do this to me? When is she really ever yours, fellas? I think about it. It's almost like, unless you meet a woman who gets handed off to you from her parents when she's of age, saying, look, we monitored her, we made sure that we raised her right, the whole nine. Unless it's that direct, like they used to do old school, more than likely, any woman that you get with these days, for the most part, is basically taking the most practical option under the circumstances, based on a life of decisions that she's made that have led her to wherever she is now, for better or for worse, and much more often than not for worse. I think that one of the most disheartening things to realize is that these days there's really nothing really sacred that a woman can bring you for the most part. Even if you think about in different religious communities where the women are groomed to live with a certain level of decency about themselves and a certain set of ethics. Even in those types of communities, it can still be tough to find one that's really living like that and not completely living a double life. And on social media, a lot of females that profess to subscribing to some sort of religious doctrine, for example, the so-called Christian woman, is really difficult to tell from just a dress and grooming standpoint the difference between her and an escort. Now, the reasons that I'm bringing these examples up is to introduce the importance of integrity, which is where we resist dishonorableness and where we actually implement principles in order to establish and maintain some sort of decency within our lives and also within the communities that we participate in. And I think that making a stance from the inside out of standing within our own uprightness is a huge stepping stone for being self-respecting men and for sharing in mutual respect within a brotherhood. And also, if there's any hope of any level of some form of a patriarchy eventually being developed, it also gives governance for the women whom may be involved in our lives. Now, I know a lot of brothers are in all types of situations out there who are listening to this, some of which I know some would actually change if they could do it all over again. And I think about the first video that I actually dropped on my YouTube channel. It was called The 10 Commandments of Not Falling for Women. That video was more or less focused on brothers who were in the trenches, doing their thing, not really trying to get caught up necessarily. They want to deal with women, but they want to do so on their own terms, where the woman doesn't actually become a distraction to them, where dealing with her isn't a liability to him, and where he can regulate the tone in which things will be done to make sure that he's always standing within his masculine framework and not compromising himself in any sort of a negative way or a disempowering way, not falling for a lot of the different things that are out there these days when you get involved with these females. But for those of us out there that might actually have a woman in our lives, or maybe some who are looking for a decent woman, and while understanding that you can't change her past, you can't read her heart, but if you do want to try to establish some sort of semblance of trying to preserve something that's worth respecting between you and her, then there are a few things that I think that you could consider and be proactive in that could assist you along the way. And these things are meant to help you to avoid many issues and also add to the caliber of man on the inside, because not only will this information be a protection for yourself, a protection for your lady, but it also helps to build your own character, which we'll see at the end. Whenever you find yourself dealing with a woman or with women in any sort of a intimate way that we're referring to here, where you are allowing her to be in your life, if you've selected her to be in your life on a certain relationship level, I do believe that it's a personal duty to guide her and to direct her, understanding that one of the most impactful types of protections that you can ever give to a woman is the avoidance of being left to her own devices. And while you can't examine everything about a woman if you're dealing with her, I also believe that her willingness to be cooperative by way of trusting in and respecting your prudent leadership is very important to even have a fighting chance of having something with her that could be respectful. The major thing that comes to my mind is giving her the awareness of the danger of associating with other men. A lot of times I'll think about different women that I've interacted with at work, other places, just in general, where you get a chance to really be around them a lot. And I always think about some of the conversations that they have, entertaining other men, talking about sex, talking about things that they really just absolutely have no business even speaking on. Before you know it, the guys at the job and whoever else she's around, they'll know all of your business about you. They'll know everything that's going on between you and her. They'll even know about intimate details of her life and what she likes in the bedroom, if she's not careful. They get a chance to be around her for 8 hours a day a lot of times, socializing. They see her even more than you probably see her. Even think about the so-called male friends. Guys whom she's been cool with for years, who she says nothing has ever happened. We don't even talk about sex. It ain't like that. That's just my homeboy, whatever it is. Even when it's like that, it still doesn't matter. There's still danger there because he's still a man. When you and her have any sort of an issue, when maybe she's not in agreement with something that's a part of your program, or since no relationship is perfect, something just comes up, whatever it might be, who do you think one of the first people is that she's going to be talking to these things about? The people who are around her the most, the people who she trusts the most, not just her homegirls, not just her female friends, but also the next most trusting man, which is a lot of times the person that she's sitting elbow to elbow with for 40 hours a week, or the person that's always been a reliable shoulder to lean on throughout the years. And a lot of times, even though she hasn't ever had any sort of sexual conversation, that can make the tension build even more. Because remember how I gave the example earlier of the woman that I knew. I don't think anything had ever happened with her and that guy. But think about how curious that makes a woman. The fact that a man can actually exercise self-control, or maybe because they haven't actually said anything to her, she now wants some sort of validation for him. Now, I don't think that I could ever, well, I'm not going to say that I don't think. I know for a fact I could never deal with any female that I would have to question. If I have to question her, I don't need to be dealing with her at all on any level to any extent. But I do believe that if she really respects you, there are certain things that she should be willing to adopt and change in order to protect the relationship and her place in it. Just a few examples. Making sure that when she leaves the house, she's not dressed in a manner in which she's obviously looking for attention. She should be modest. What does she need to try to be sexy for to other people if she's with you? It doesn't mean that I don't understand that a woman is not going to want to embrace her aesthetic, her feminine aesthetic. But what I'm saying is, out of wisdom, you should be able to pick up on how much respect she has for you just by how she leaves the house. You should also be able to tell just by the conversations that she participates in. Does she have guys calling her after 9, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, having conversations with her, texting her, thinking that that's an acceptable hour? Is that even appropriate? And you can actually set up restrictions with your woman if you wanted to do that. But of course, that doesn't stop her from doing anything. Because I've seen it so many different times where a woman was dealing with a guy at home and then she was dealing with another guy at the gig or dealing with another guy who was a friend. And all it takes is literally a few minutes for something to happen. Those moments when she's driving home or when she talking about she got to stop at the store, especially if it's in the wintertime, right? Because now you can buy yourself a lot more time than usual. Or when you have to go make that unplanned run, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, just stuff that a lot of guys don't even think about. You need to be aware of those times in which she might be putting herself in situations that can cause a lot of harm, both intentionally and unintentionally. When we talked about something that was somewhat disturbing earlier, another thing that I thought about was something that can sting much more, because this doesn't actually involve a woman's heart necessarily being somewhere else, but the people who are around you that have their eyes on her, that are very close to you. I'm talking about your friends. Example. I was at a gentleman's club, if you want to call it that, and one of the dancers was having a conversation with her, and she went up on stage and, she did her thing. And I remember this guy walked up to the stage and just looking up and down her and just, looking like he was just in awe of this girl. And, she was out there, she was performing or whatever, and she did her thing where she came down off the stage and kind of like straddled the guy, dancing on his lap, facing him, kind of like mimicking, riding him a little bit. And after her set was up, she continued the conversation with me, and she said, he knows my son's father. And I said, he knows him, like he knows him, like that's his boy, or he just knows who he is? She said, no, that's his friend. I said, what? That's his friend? She said, yeah. We've been texting each other for a while, like just as friends. He doesn't know that. So I said, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that's your son's father's friend? He was just sitting up there looking you up and down, every part of your body. He now knows how you look with 95% of your clothes off. And you up here grinding all over this dude and been texting him for years, but you claiming that y'all just been texting as friends, but yet your son's father doesn't know about this? I said, how would you feel if he did that to you? If he was real cool, one of your friends behind your back, and he was, a patron at a strip club or something like that, and she was dancing all over him. She said, well, I ain't got friends like that. And she said, these niggas don't care. I said, apparently you don't either. She said, hey. I said, damn. Now, that might be an extreme situation because we're talking about a dancer, right? Talking about a stripper. And most guys are not in relationships with girls at the club, which of course you should never be, but that might actually be another video one day. But nonetheless, let's bring it a little bit closer to home. What if she works in another very social environment? Maybe she's a bartender or something like that, where she's always talking to different guys and flirting with different guys to get tips or whatever it is that she might be doing. Beware of these environments that you allow your women to spend a lot of time in. You have to beware of those things if you want to have any fighting chance of trying to maintain decency. Even when it comes to things like leaving your woman at home by herself when a guy's coming to hook the internet up or something like that. I used to do a lot of sales and service type jobs where you would go to people's homes, and it would always amaze me how many guys would just leave their wives or their girl at the house while I go over there and do what I gotta do. I never did nothing, but it's just the whole point that these women were usually very conversational. They want to talk to you, you know, even if it's just general talking. But if I really wanted to be that type of dude, it would have been nothing. But you need to really be mindful of that, even if it's just something where he's just coming by to do whatever he has to do for 20, 30 minutes, you need to be there. In fact, I don't even think she should even be in the house if possible. But if she is, she should be out of the vicinity of wherever the guy is working. Because keep in mind that he's going to be thinking something later on like, okay, I can always come back here, maybe try to catch her on another night. That's the first thing that goes into his head. Try to catch her on an afternoon where maybe he's not around. And then, of course, you're also putting her in a dangerous situation by even leaving her alone with a man in general because of things that can happen to her. So it's just about being mindful of certain things. With this video, I'm just kind of just thinking of things almost as they come to me, because it's just very hard these days to try to establish some sort of nobility within relationships. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the brothers, especially in this black male media space, are kind of deciding to just walk away for the most part, or to deal at arm's length. It's almost like the level of trust just isn't there anymore. And like I said, man, even if you just got a handful of friends, I've seen it happen. There's a chance that at least one of them are looking at your girl. Be careful of that. Be careful of the guys who you just got hanging around the house. Don't let people in intimate areas of your home. Don't think it's cool to just have your boys over sitting on the bed where you share that bed with your girl. Don't leave them in the kitchen while she's in there cooking and just talking and having a conversation, because he's looking at that. And he's looking at that and saying, man, I wish I had a girl like that who would be cooking for me. I wish I had a girl like that who was nice. Doesn't mean he's even trying to, but it's just what happens. And a lot of these guys, I hate to say this, but a lot of people that you think are your friends, they're actually waiting for something to happen just so they can get in there and make a move on your girl. A lot of these guys are actually trying to play the hero undercover. I know guys who will sit up there and collect data. Not guys that I associate with, but I know of them, I should be saying. Who will sit up there and collect data. I've seen it over the years on one of their friends Every little thing that he does, if he was at the club dancing with a girl, or he was here, he was there, he was doing whatever he was doing, just so they can try to relay that information back to their friend's woman, just so it can win them a few points, so she can keep that in mind. It's really sick. It's really sad, really. And Pusha T, he actually had this track called Nostalgia with Kendrick Lamar. And he said something that was kind of, it was kind of riveting. He said, "We don't drink away the pain. When a nigga die, we add a link to the chain. Inscribe a nigga name in your flesh. We playing on a higher game of chess. Once you delegate his bills, who gon' fuck his bitch the best?" Real life scenarios, man, where somebody's literally waiting. Somebody is supposed to be in your corner, just waiting to take your woman. Somebody who's had eyes on her all this time. She should be very careful of how she's dressed, even when she has company over. She should be damn near dressed like a nun. Because, of course, as we know, gentlemen, literally anything on a woman from head to toe can be sexy. So careful of your homeboys that you think are your friends. Always want to ask about your girl. Always want to socialize with her. Always want her to you to bring her. And be careful of stuff like that, man. Because I can honestly say that out of all the friends that I've ever had, I've never once really wanted to know anything about their girl in terms of, I don't mean not having interest in her as a human being. I mean, I've never wanted to be around their girl. For what? Now, if they brought them around, they brought them around. But I've never had like a, "Hey, won't you bring her next time?" Or won't you, like, it's just not necessary. And it's not because of trying to resist anything as much as it's just, why do you even really have an interest like that? I'm not talking about something where maybe you talking about a double date. And even then you got to be careful, because sometimes guys, they try to do that just on the sly to make it seem like it's just all about socializing and just getting up. Your lady, meet my lady, we can all be cool. And sometimes they'll be checking for your lady in situations like that too. But it's just the thought of, it's not important for me to have a relationship with one of my friends' women. It's just not. Do I think that based on the closeness of the friendship, she should have an awareness? Yes. I should have an awareness who each other are? Yes. Something like that, that's cool. But as far as wanting to always be curious about your girl and everything like that, you should have your radar up a little bit when it comes to situations like that. Because a lot of people out here, man, they just don't really have any morals. No morals whatsoever. But this is the part where we get down to you. Because I think that throughout this entire video, and I kind of felt like I was just kind of rambling a bit, but I was just thinking of things as they were coming to me, and I said, I think it's important that if we're talking about moving forward, even if it's in small pockets, there has to be some sort of respect there, right? There has to be some sort of boundaries between what will be acceptable, what will not be acceptable. But before we can even exercise that type of respect, the respect has to start within ourselves. Because we can't control what anyone else does. We can't control what anyone else thinks. We can't read hearts. But we do know that we can be totally responsible for our own selves. So what about you? Gave some examples of making sure that your woman isn't in situations that could be detrimental to her and or your relationship. Gave examples of making sure that you're keeping an eye on the guys who are close to you as well as others. Not allowing her to be in certain situations that could cause issues, and really looking at it also from the angle of making sure that your friends are really your friends. But what about you? Have you ever kind of caught yourself looking at your brother's property a little bit longer than you should? You ever get ready to go somewhere and there she is, and you notice that she be smelling good, she got an ass, you notice her body, you know that she's pretty, you know she's nice. Have you ever had a conversation with some of the other guys like, man, yo, I know that's the homie girl, but man, have you ever done that? Have you ever even thought it? So imagine that you indulge in these ideas a little bit more silently. Maybe you're not saying anything. Maybe you just notice her. She's captivating. She's a very beautiful woman. And maybe you let your thoughts kind of get the best of you. And you go off and you drift off and start fantasizing about her. And you imagine doing everything in the book that you would want to do, but nah, I ain't gonna do it though, because that's my boy. I can't be doing that to him. And then imagine that your friend is your blood brother and that his girlfriend is your sister-in-law. How would you feel then? Would you not be ashamed and disgusted with yourself for letting yourself even go there, even within your own head? But why would you look at it any differently? Because she's not blood, just like your sister-in-law is not blood. You might say, well, my brother's blood. But if you're banning for brotherhood, as many of us are, and you're actually forming family with people whom you may eventually even lay your life down on a line for because of principles that you both abide by as a unit, why would you look at it any differently? There needs to be some sort of established code and honor among men that the group practices, but never forget about that code of honor within ourselves. That no one knows about but us. Slightly different video. Just wanted to give a few thoughts to consider. As always, I appreciate the love and the support. Look to drop in videos a little bit more frequently. Make sure you definitely check out the links. Don't forget about the website, the esquireproject.com. As always, brothers, if you like to support, you're more than welcome to do so, and I'm greatly appreciative of that. As always, keep your mind strong, your heart in check, and may wisdom be with you. One love.